Hi everyone, it's Andy Tech with Check New Tech, and today we are looking at a T-Mobile specific phone. So T-Mobile manufactures their own line of phones. Yes, it's called the Revvl. You've probably heard of them. They got mixed reviews from the first to current generation, but today we're going to look at one of their newer phones that came out in late 2021. It is the Revvl V Plus 5G. So this was the budget version of the T-Mobile 5G phone. This was actually the cheapest 5G phone they had in the market. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the specs on it. So out of the box, it doesn't really tell me a whole lot except for there are 3 bands for 5G. So this is nice. I think everyone wants to upgrade to a phone to get 5G these days. But you do have to be a T-Mobile customer to use this because this will only work on T-Mobile. I don't know if they could unlock this one as of yet, but I could find that out. If you're interested, just comment below. So some of the basic specs on this phone is one thing I already mentioned, it has 3 bands of 5G. It also is 4G LTE compatible as well. And it has 3G and 2G bands. I think they're phasing out some of those, so we're going to see how those work. But if you really can't get coverage, maybe you'll have to rely on those. It has a 6.83-inch screen, so that is huge. When I unbox this, I'm expecting a gigantic screen. The other thing that is kind of unusual about this phone, which is a really big plus, is it has a 5,000 milliamp battery. So if it has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, like comparing it to the S21, which has a 4,000, I'm assuming because of the big screen, it's going to have a bigger battery. Hopefully the battery life will be great on this. It has a USB-C port, and something that most phones don't even have today is a headphone jack. So it has a headphone jack where you could plug your headphone/mic in there. What's also interesting about this phone, which I think is kind of a negative, is it has 720 by 1640 pixels. So that means like a 720p resolution. So not even 1080p. I don't know if you're going to be able to decipher how it looks, but we're going to take a look at that as well. It's only 257 ppi. So you're looking at pixels per inch. So that's compared to like the 400 or so in the Samsung. So that's going to be a bit of a step down. It does have an IPS LCD screen. So for such a big screen, it actually should have, a better resolution. But I expected an LCD. That's going to be the cheaper option. It does come with Android 11 in there. It has a MediaTek 700 processor, which means it gives you 2 cores at about 2.2 gigahertz and about 6 cores at 2.0. This is a fairly new processor, so we're going to check out some games and see how that performs. It only has 4 gigs of RAM, which is kind of a downside, 64 gig internal storage space, which is about mediocre, but it does have an SD card expansion slot, so that's a huge plus on this. It has a 16 megapixel wide angle camera and a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera. So it actually has 3 cameras because it has a 2 megapixel depth sensor. So that's going to hopefully take better than average quality pictures. But we are looking at a sub $200 phone. I'm not sure if I mentioned the price earlier. So for having all of that in a sub $200 phone, I'm hoping that the camera, I have high hopes for it. And one thing that's surprising about this has a front facing 16 megapixel selfie camera. So I'm going to take a couple selfies on this because that's a pretty high resolution camera for a selfie camera. And the other interesting part is it has a side mounted fingerprint reader. So enough about talking about the specs. Let's go ahead and open it up. All right, after cutting the 2 flaps with the seam ripper, I'm going to go ahead and open this phone. Comes in a nice pink box. That's the T-Mobile color if you're not familiar with T-Mobile. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the phone. This is the most exciting part. So voila, there is the phone. It actually isn't as bulky as I thought because it does have a huge battery, but it feels like you're holding a phone. Some of these things are really delicate. This actually feels like you could put it in your hand, and it's fairly big, but there's not a lot of bezel around it, so that's one thing I noticed. So even though it's a huge screen, it doesn't feel like you're holding a gigantic Note, like the Galaxy Note series. Those things were just huge, the early Note series. I could see a microphone here. I see the triple camera in the back here. So you get the 16 megapixel wide, the ultra wide 5 megapixel, the depth sensor, and the flash. One thing that's really neat is you've got the headphone jack here, and I know some people don't care about that, but it's nice if you really want to plug in your headphones, if your Bluetooth headphones die. And you've got your USB-C, so I'm glad at least they incorporated that. Here on the sides I see the volume rocker, and this feels kind of metallic on the sides, so that's interesting. That's your SIM card right there. Is your SIM card eject. You could eject that and put your SIM card, probably your SD card as well. And here is the side power/fingerprint reader. So it's a power button, and it also is a fingerprint reader. So when you put your finger there, it will register it, which is nice because a lot of times they have the fingerprint reader on the back, and I always touch the camera. So it's nice to have it on the side so you don't ruin your camera accidentally if you like press it too many times or press it too hard. The back of this is kind of interesting. It actually has like a really like light hue, with like the pink there, and you could see it at different angles. If I look at it from the side, it's black. If I look at it straight on, it's actually pink. So it's really neat. Even though this is like a plastic feel, it actually has a really exotic look. If you're gonna put a case on it, it may cover that. But if you put a clear case, it actually looks really neat anyway. So that's what I noticed from this in and of itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at what else is in the box here. And I do see looks like a SIM eject tool. Here's a quick start guide. Here's a safety guide. They put a USB charger. And by the way, charging specs are not here. That's why I had to refer to these. It's an 18-watt charger, so it's not fast charging. They call it faster than standard charging, but from what I read, it's about 2 hours to charge it fully. So here's the wall charger. Here is the charging cable. So glad they include that. I mean, these days they try to skimp on everything. So at least you have those two pieces. And that's about it. There's nothing else in here. All right, so we are going to plug this in to the wall. I plugged it into the phone already, one part of the cord, and we're going to let this charge. So it looks like it is pretty low on battery right now, out of the box. And so, never mind, it's actually 29% now, so fooled us a little bit. So let's go ahead and let that charge fully, and then we're gonna go ahead and power it on. But while this is charging, I'm going to also install a screen protector and case. I got this one from Amazon. It also covers the camera lenses, which is kind of neat. I haven't seen that in a lot of cases. And I believe this comes with a tempered glass as well. So let's go ahead and open that and check it out. Looks quite durable, so yeah, this actually slides. That's kind of neat. I haven't seen that before. And it has a cleaning kit, so that does look like a tempered glass in there. Perfect for this. Yep, there we go. There's a tempered glass. Actually looks like there's two of them. Okay, as you can see from this mess here, I did install the screen protector and the case. The only thing I have to say about this case is it's kind of quirky. I don't sponsor these cases. I don't work with these manufacturers, but super quirky. Look at that. I mean, it does not protect the camera if you just do this. It kind of like, I feel like if it's in your pocket, it's not really going to protect the camera. So if that's your main reason of buying this case, you might want to look elsewhere. But it is actually a pretty durable case. It looks pretty well built. Other than that little flaw where every time I move it this way, the camera part opens up. But it does a good job. It's a little bit raised on the edges too, so it does a good job of protecting the phone, and it has a tempered glass. Okay, now that we charged the phone and put the screen protector and case on, it took about maybe an hour and 15 minutes or so to fully charge this phone. So let's go ahead and power it on. All right, exciting stuff. T-Mobile, Revvl V plus 5G. We're gonna go ahead and set this up. Hopefully it is a nice and swift setup. So once you get to the home screen, you could see there's a little bit of a glare, but when you're playing videos that are a little bit darker, you're not going to notice it in contrast to the lighter colored videos. And the colors are surprisingly decent for a phone that's really on the cheaper side. Like I said, you're going to see a little bit of that. The camera in the middle is really nice. It's not too distracting on the front face, and then you also get some really great quality video, as good as it's going to be for a 720p. Yeah, I wish they put a 1080 in there, but unless you're a huge video aficionado, you're not really going to notice a huge difference. You're not going to be able to see all of those pixels, so it is really nice for everyday video watching. Gameplay is pretty decent on this phone. I mean, with the processor being its MediaTek and you have 4 GB of memory, you could play games, you could multitask, you could watch videos. you could pretty much do all of your everyday activities and not notice any real lag in this system. Overall, what I like is it's pretty vanilla Android. They don't have a lot of bloatware installed, so everything is pretty much stock, which is actually surprising. So it performs more like, or it looks and feels more like the Google Pixel in my opinion. Because it's a larger screen, you actually might enjoy playing video games on this. And like I said, because the MediaTek processor performs a lot better than I expected, you're not going to have any real issues. You might have to lower the graphics a little bit for some of your favorite games, but at least it'll prevent you from having any real lags in gaming performance for this phone. Given that this was a really low budget phone, I didn't have high expectations for the camera, but I do have to say that AI did a pretty good job. It oversaturates a little bit, and you can't really get a lot of the details in the background. But overall, if you're using it as your daily driver, you're not going to be disappointed for the camera and day shots. There might be some night shots that could actually come out a little bit better, but it's not bad by any means. You also get a pretty darn good front-facing selfie camera, so I was pretty happy with that overall. So after using the Revvl V Plus 5G for a few days, almost a week or so, I'm going to give you my final thoughts on it. So hopefully this will help you determine whether you want to buy it or not. So some things that you've already seen from the review was I was actually pleasantly surprised by this phone. I was not expecting a lot from a sub $200 phone. And if T-Mobile was offering so many incentives, if you trade in any phone, you get this for free. So basically they didn't even value it at $200. So I was expecting something like more of a $100 phone that would be laggy, but it performed really well. It was a bit faster than I thought. I know 4 gigs of RAM was a little bit low, but unless you're opening like 10 applications at a time and keeping them open, you're not really going to feel that. It actually played a lot of the games that I like to play, and it played them in low to medium frame rates, which is actually pretty good. So the graphics didn't suffer too much, and it didn't lag. That's what I was more concerned about, that the processor would be, it's a MediaTek processor, so maybe be a little bit slow. It's faster than I thought. It has plenty of storage in the box. It also has the SD card expansion, so I really like that option. The fingerprint reader is really nice. The pictures were above average, and the selfie camera was a lot better than I thought. So 16 megapixel selfie, it's not software based where it actually interpolates it. It's pure 16 megapixels. So overall, if you are looking at an entry to maybe even mid-level phone that has 5G, I would highly recommend getting this phone because it surpassed my expectations. The battery life lasts 1 day easily. I never ran into a low battery issue ever. And I'm a pretty frequent user, so I try to, kind of test drive it a little bit more, pull it out a little bit more than usual. But it did a great job. 5G worked really well where I live. Your mileage may vary based on that. It has 3 5G bands, but they're pretty ultra wide bands, so I don't think you're going to have real issues with it. So I would highly recommend considering this if the only stipulation is you have to be on T-Mobile and you want a lower end 5G phone under $200, definitely worth looking at. And for those reasons, I'm actually going to give this an 8.0 out of 10. This is my tech score. I hope this helped you determine whether you want to buy the Revvl V Plus 5G, if you're on T-Mobile, of course, or maybe even Sprint. Maybe I think they might even have that collaboration where you could buy this and use it on Sprint. So if you like this video, please hit the subscribe and like button below. This is Andy Tech signing off.